You ever find yourself playing a game and you get to that point, where you got to make a choice?
Oh, yeah.
Like, do I go in with guns blazing,
Right.
or try and be all sneaky and clever about it,
Right.
or maybe team up with someone? It seems like just a normal part of playing a game.
Sure.
But like, what if those choices, those little clicks that you make, actually tell us something deeper about stories?
Yeah, that's what's so cool about interactive storytelling is that it lets you make those choices and see how they shape what happens.
Exactly. So today we're going to take a deep dive into one of the all-time greatest adventure games, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Ah, classic.
Released way back in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be looking at articles and game reviews, even some interviews with the developers,
Nice.
to see how this game became such a legend and what it teaches us about storytelling, pushing the limits of technology, and giving players real choices.
It's amazing how this game was already doing things back then that are still so relevant today.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling the nostalgia already. I might have spent a little too much time with this one back in the day,
Yeah.
solving those ancient riddles,
I hear ya.
trying to stay one step ahead of those Nazis.
I think I might still have my old notes somewhere. All those dialogue trees mapped out.
Oh yeah, of course, purely for research.
Of course,
But seriously though, this game was more than just a way to kill time. Fate of Atlantis came out in '92 from the legendary LucasArts.
The masters of adventure games.
Exactly, and it was visually stunning for its time, with those immersive environments created with the SEM engine.
Oh, yeah.
But it was the story that really set it apart.
It's all about the story and how it puts you, the player, right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So the basic plot is that Indy's searching for the lost city of Atlantis.
Racing against those Nazis.
Of course. Who always seem to want to use these ancient powers for their own evil schemes.
Exactly. They're all about harnessing that orichalcum power.
Now this is where things get interesting. Indy teams up with the brilliant Sophia Hapgood. Right. And you, as the player, you get to choose how you want to approach the game.
This is where the three paths system comes in.
Yep. You could go with the team path, you and Sophia working together,
Right.
combining your skills, and there's some great banter along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Or you could go solo with the wits path, relying on your brain to solve puzzles and outsmart your enemies.
The classic Indiana Jones approach.
And this is the fists path,
Oh.
which, well, let's just say Indy gets a little more physical with his solutions.
Haha. A bit more action-packed.
Exactly. And what's so revolutionary about this three-path system is that it makes each playthrough unique.
You get a different experience depending on your choices.
Not just in terms of how you play, but the story itself changes.
You meet different characters. Events unfold in different ways.
Even the ending is affected by your choices.
You could play this game multiple times, and it's like having 3 different adventures in one.
That's incredible.
Think about how many games today still struggle to give you that level of replayability and choice.
It's really remarkable. So how did they pull this off back in 1992? It wasn't like they had all the tools and technology that we have now.
Right. Let's take a peek behind the scenes and see how they made this groundbreaking game.
I heard that Fate of Atlantis almost had a completely different title.
Oh, definitely. The early ideas were not nearly as exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad they went with something that really captured the epic scale of the story.
Me too.
And speaking of scale, these developers, they were serious about authenticity. They didn't just do a quick Google search for Atlantis.
Oh, no, they dug deep.
They went all in on the research.
They were looking at Plato's writings. They were exploring Donnelly's theories.
Really trying to understand how the Atlanteans might have used orichalcum.
They wanted the game to feel grounded in real history and mythology.
And get this, the music is stored. It wasn't just a static soundtrack.
Oh, no.
They used a system called IMUE that let the music change based on what you were doing in the game.
Just like a movie score.
It's incredible. It really makes you feel like you're part of this grand adventure.
Yeah. It adds so much to the emotional impact.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Creating a game like this back then came with its own challenges.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, we're talking early 90s here.
The technology was so limited.
Imagine trying to create this visually rich and expansive world.
With a 4-color palette.
Wow. It's amazing what they were able to do with the tools they had.
They had to be so creative.
And there were even concerns about releasing the game in Germany because of some of the themes.
It's a good reminder that even brilliant game developers are limited by the world around them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like with Fate of Atlantis, sometimes those limitations can lead to even more innovative solutions.
That's right.
So we've talked about the story and the challenges, but what about the impact it had on the gaming world?
That's where things get really interesting. Fate of Atlantis wasn't just a great game, it was a turning point.
Okay.
It showed that giving players real choices could make for a truly engaging and memorable experience.
That's something we're going to explore in more depth in just a bit.
Looking forward to it.
We'll be right back to delve into the legacy of Fate of Atlantis.
It's wild how Fate of Atlantis still holds up so well today. You know?
I know, right? It's always showing up on those best of lists.
Even next to all these modern games with fancy graphics and huge open worlds.
Yeah. It really speaks to the power of a good story.
And a game that respects the player's intelligence.
You know, I remember those late nights just completely lost in that world.
Oh, yeah.
Agonizing over every decision.
Feeling like your choices actually mattered.
Exactly. That's what Fate of Atlantis understood so well, the power of player agency.
It was ahead of its time in that way.
It moved away from that traditional linear storytelling.
And embraced something more dynamic and interactive.
It really makes you think about the games we play now.
Right.
How many of them really give you branching storylines, multiple endings, or even the ability to shape your character's personality?
Those ideas were definitely influenced by games like Fate of Atlantis.
It showed the industry what was possible when you gave players real choices.
It wasn't just about watching or reading a story anymore.
It was about becoming part of it.
About blurring those lines between the creator and the audience.
And its influence goes beyond just video games. You see it in interactive fiction, those choose-your-own-adventure books.
Even some films and TV shows are playing with interactive elements.
So if Fate of Atlantis was so ahead of its time, what does that tell us about the future of interactive storytelling?
That's a great question. As technology keeps advancing, the possibilities for immersive experiences are only going to grow.
Right.
We're already seeing it with virtual reality, augmented reality, even AI-powered storytelling.
It's like those lines between the real world and the digital world are starting to disappear.
Exactly.
Imagine a game where your choices don't just affect the game's story, but have consequences in your real life.
Whoa, that's a bit Black Mirror-ish, but I like where you're going with this.
Right. It could affect your social media feeds, your relationships, even your career.
The potential for personalized stories is just mind-blowing.
And it all comes back to that idea of player agency.
As we move into this new era of storytelling.
It's the stories that let us actively shape the world that are going to have the biggest impact.
Before we get too lost in the future, though, let's come back to Fate of Atlantis for a moment.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about the narrative design.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the artistry and the technical achievements that made it all possible.
Absolutely. I mean, even with those limitations at the time,
That 4-color palette.
they were able to create some truly unforgettable visuals.
Those environments were so detailed.
From the streets of Algiers to the underwater beauty of Atlantis.
And the music, it was like something out of a movie.
I know, it really added to the emotional impact of everything.
They actually brought in professional voice actors from the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists to record the dialogue.
Wow.
They were really committed to making this game feel like a high-quality experience.
Definitely shows.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype of the latest games.
Right.
But it's often those smaller, more intimate stories like Fate of Atlantis that stick with us.
It's amazing how they created a world that felt so real, a story that felt so personal, even with those technical limitations.
It's a legacy that continues to inspire.
It reminds us that at the heart of any great story is the power of choice.
The ability to shape the narrative alongside the creators.
So what's the big takeaway here for our listeners?
What can we learn from Fate of Atlantis and the future of storytelling?
It all comes back to choice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Whether it's in the games we play, the books we read, even the movies we watch.
It's that ability to make decisions that really pulls you in.
Instead of just passively watching, you're actively participating.
And that makes you feel more connected to the story. You care more about what happens.
Absolutely. And that's something important to remember as we move into this world where everything is becoming more interactive.
It's all about blurring the lines, between the creator and the audience.
Letting people shape the stories that resonate with them. I wonder if someday we'll see a game that takes that idea of interactive storytelling even further than Fate of Atlantis.
Oh, I'm sure we will. The possibilities are endless.
We've talked about a lot today, from the technical side of things with the SKM engine to the bigger ideas about player agency and what it means for storytelling.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion.
But before we go, I have one last thought, something to kind of chew on.
Okay.
We've been talking about the power of choice in games and media. But what about the choices we make in our own lives?
Ooh, getting philosophical now.
Every decision, every path we take leads us down a different road.
You know, you're right. It's like our lives are one big interactive story.
We're constantly facing those branching paths, those multiple endings.
And our choices have consequences that ripple out and affect not just us, but the people around us.
So as you go through your day, facing those decisions, big and small,
Yeah.
remember what Fate of Atlantis taught us. Your choices matter.
Make them count.
Embrace them, own them, and most importantly, have fun creating your own adventure.
Well said.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time for another exploration of the ideas that shape our world.